Hi, I'm Caleb Riley. I am currently a student here at Wisconsin Lutheran College, where I am majoring in business management and minoring in accounting. Today, I'll be going over a personal reflection at my time here at WLC, going over some notable experiences I've had on campus, going into how my experience with the School of Business went, and as well as how my time in the capstone class has gone. Ultimately, what led me to WLC was football. My head coach in high school was able to connect me here with Tresky, and I was really attracted to the smaller campus and the fact that it was faith-based as well, and that is ultimately why I decided to come here. All right, up first, I will be going into some of the notable experiences here at WLC. First, I want to go into my time here on the football team. This is not your typical experience. I came from playing both ways in high school to playing almost none at all here at WLC. What this required me to do is redefine how I viewed leadership. It wasn't as easy as for me to be able to lead by example because I wasn't on the field. However, I found other ways to find a role on the team and give support to my teammates. And ultimately, this redefined what I believe leadership to be, and I took on a much more selfless role. I've also had several injuries which kept me from where I wanted to be, and that experience has strengthened me a lot and given me a lot of virtue. The next thing I wanted to discuss is my time in the environmental science lab, which is a gen ed course here at Wisconsin Lutheran College. This opened my eyes to many career possibilities as we got to tour water treatment facilities, waste management facilities, and even got to learn about the Forest Service and wildland firefighting. This made me realize that there are other venues that I can apply my degree to, and I don't have to be trapped to a 9-to-5 desk job in corporate America, per se. This was really beneficial for me as I at one point felt kind of stuck. The next experience I want to talk about is the efforts I put into becoming a resident assistant here on campus. This has been the most difficult but rewarding process of my time here at WLC. I actually had to apply twice, once in my sophomore year and once in my junior year. I got denied once, and it really was hard for me to bounce back from that, but coming back and reapplying and getting accepted into the role and taking it head on and facing the challenges that come with it has been really fruitful for me, and I really appreciate it. And it is definitely why I think God brought me here on campus, because it has allowed me to grow so much. That has been my notable experiences here on campus. Now I'll be going into some of the more notable experiences I've had specifically within the School of Business. I first want to talk about the Principles of Management class I took with Peter Eppen my freshman year. I distinctly remember the first day of class. He presented us a case study of something from his personal experiences, and he asked us how we would handle it and if we were in his situation. I remember poring over it and thinking and putting a lot of thought into it, and just not really having the confidence to raise my hand and share what I thought. And it turned out that what I had come up with was what he was looking for when another student shared a similar answer. This was definitely a learning moment for me, and it also made me realize that I was in the right place, learning from professors with real world experience. Next, I want to talk about the project management course I took here in the School of Business. I distinctly remember a group exercise we did in class one day where we were split into groups. We were given a situation about a project going over budget and over timeline, and how we would approach the client about it and what solutions we would present. And we actually had to pretend that the professor was the client. And I remember when our group, which was mostly juniors and seniors, and I was a sophomore, nobody had wanted to go up and interact with the professor and present in front of the class. And so I was like, you know what, I'll do it. And at the end of it all, she revealed to us that the whole time it had been a competition, and that our group actually won as we came up with the best answer. And that was just a really good moment for me, and made me realize that project management is definitely a part of the career path that I want to choose. The next course I want to talk about is managerial accounting. This is not the typical course you would take for my degree path, as business management would require management-focused accounting and not managerial. This was a more in-depth look into actually creating the information that management uses to make decisions. I took this course because at the time I thought I wanted to double major in finance, but I was having a really hard time understanding the concepts. And this class was really clear to me, and it made me realize that a minor in accounting would be a lot more fitting for what I want. Next, I want to touch on the capstone experience. This has been a great class and a really good kind of overall summary of what we've learned in the School of Business, as well as providing great workshops to prepare us for going into our future careers. What I'm really thankful for about this class is the professional mentorship that we had to do coinciding with the class. I got to reconnect with some of my old bosses from an internship I did. Here's Dave Warner and Brian of Brave Remodeling. These are two great guys that I got to reconnect with. I listed Dave as the actual mentor, but Brian is also always on the other end of the phone giving me advice. What's interesting about these guys is that neither of them went to college, and so for me as a college student, getting to learn from them and all their many different business ventures, it's definitely a unique experience and is definitely preparing me well to re-enter the construction industry at some point. I also want to talk about the personal finance workshop we had. This was a great and fresh review of stuff that I already know, but was an important reminder that to be successful, you have to take the effort to save, and you have to spend smartly. And the budget assignment that went along with that workshop was really put into perspective. It is simple, but it does take effort, and I learned through that experience just how important it is to take that effort, and I find it extremely valuable. The next experience I would like to talk about from the capstone class was the near final presentation for our group project. This was definitely the most nerve-wracking presentation I've ever had to work on, but ultimately it was super rewarding. Getting to go up there to present in front of the class and some business faculty, and just being able to take professional criticism and applying it back into our project to make it better. That was a great learning experience, and I think is definitely going to help gear me towards success in my career. And that segues into my next point, which is the most important lesson I've learned from the capstone group project. In this group project, we got to work with Healthline First Aid and addressing some of their business issues. Ultimately, the most important lesson I have learned from this experience is how to voice my own opinion. As I had said earlier, I struggle even raising my hand in class sometimes. But being in the group meeting environment and realizing that if you don't share what you have, what you're seeing, the group might not see it at all. And, being honest in these moments can bring clarity to the problems that you have. And so I think it is super important that you're capable of voicing your opinion when working in a group. And if you do it correctly, this builds trust. If you share positively and you accept positively, the group is going to want to trust each other more and bring better synergy to the environment, and the group will ultimately work better because of it. So that has been my most valuable lesson in the capstone group project. Next, I want to go into my personal mission statement, and I will read it real quickly for you. I want to experience the soul of our country through fighting fires in our dry country. I want to see the world while spreading the spirit and good news of our Father. I want to be remembered as a father, leader, and a faithful man. Most importantly, I want to live every day with no regret, showing the grace of God in everything I do. As you notice, there's a very specific goal listed in that first line, and that is becoming a wildland firefighter. I had mentioned learning about the Forest Service and environmental science. I think that is a very honorable way for me to serve my country, and I would love to even just do one season of it and have that experience under my belt and have those stories to tell. As we go on through my personal statement, you can see that my faith is also very important to me. I've always considered ministry as an option for a career, and I also have a desire to travel, and I think missionary work would be a great way to achieve both. So yeah, that is my personal mission statement. I also want to go into my top 5 Clifton strengths as well. They are in order: restorative, deliberative, relator, significance, and achiever. The first one, restorative, can be described as a love to solve problems. I think this is a very applicable, number one strength for me. Whether it was in middle school learning teaching myself how to solve a Rubik's Cube, or in high school, being able to learn how to fix my mountain bike after a pretty crazy crash, or in my time in the construction industry, noticing flaws or problems on site and being able to get them addressed appropriately, even at an entry-level position. It's being able to identify and solve these problems is something that I think is, an adequate number one strength for me. The next one is my second strength, which is deliberative, the deliberative strength. This is described as someone who is careful and vigilant and has a sense of risk. I think because of the way that I think of and observe things, I think I notice things most people don't. And I think that, what comes with this is also overthinking, which could be viewed as a weakness, but that's really where I start relying on other people. And just, I think, having that sense of risk, and, that is a strong second strength for me. My third strength is the relator strength, and this describes how I work with other people, and it is described as gaining strength from the people you're closest with. And I think what this means for me is that I have a desire to want to build personal connections with those I'm working with, as I know that it'll be easier for me to work with them and easier for me to get to achieve the goal with them. And I think I am fairly selfless, and I have that innate desire to, want to build those types of connections for the betterment of the group. The next strength, which is one of the more difficult strengths for me to wrestle with, is the significance strength. And this is described as a want to be significant. It wasn't until Jeremy Bach broke it down for me, and he told me to think about it more in a group way than a personal way. Because as I had mentioned, I feel like I'm a relatively selfless person. He said that I want to be a part of something great, and I will do as much as I can to bring the other people around me up to that standard as well. And I think that learning that description from a different perspective, really opened my eyes to just how applicable this strength is for me. My fifth and final strength is the achiever strength. This is simply described as every day starts at zero. I find motivation from completing achievements, and I think that this goes hand in hand with my first strength, which is that love to solve problems. If I can identify problems and achieve that solution, then I'm going to become motivated and get a fire lit under me and be able to work forward. So that is my personal mission statement and my top 5 Clifton strengths. Next, I'll be going into some of the next steps as I plan to go into my career. The first one is to continue working in the construction industry. As I mentioned, I've been able to mentor with construction companies, and I definitely think that this is a great career path for me, and especially to achieve a career in project management. I have done direct work within project management with some of these internships. The next step after that is to find my way with either the Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, or the United States Wildlife Firefighting Service. As I had mentioned before, this is a very important goal to me. Even just being able to experience one season would be enough, but I also know that this could open many career possibilities for me and allow me to really further my experiences and learn more about myself and my skill set. My third and final next step goal is to figure out how missionary work fits into my future. As I had mentioned in my personal statement, my faith is extremely important to me, and I think it would be a valuable experience to try to make that work in my in my near future. And I think that even ministry, whether it's full-time or part-time, will always be a part of who I am. Next, I want to take a moment to thank all the friends I have made here at WLC, whether that's the RA group or the football team or the intramural team that I got to work with these last 2 years. I also want to thank the mentors I've made, having Jamie Valerio as a boss this last year and John Bakke as somebody I can go to for accountability. Just having those people, being able to pour into me has been extremely valuable. I also want to thank Professor Palmer, Professor Berg, and Professor Van Acker for, taking the time to pour into me personally and just really showing that, as a student, I matter here on campus, and I will forever be grateful for that. My time here at WLC, in the School of Business, and just my overall experience on campus has been worthwhile, and I will never forget it. Thank you.